Hey, Collective. Spirits let me know that my last few posts on judgment and how to call judgment trigger pretty much everybody. This triggering is actually helpful if you're open to it. And so I want to explain a little bit more about this process of judgment, which I believe is the most powerful and empowering tool we could possibly have. It seems the most triggering step for people is recognizing that they have to get over their grudges. In order to call judgment, we can't do so from the ego. And it can be very difficult sometimes to get over that part of us who wants to attack. But I want you to understand the payoff and why it's worth doing. If there's one thing that you can do to empower yourself in life, it would be to rid yourself of all grudges and resentments towards anyone. It doesn't happen overnight, but you see, that is what makes you indomitable. You know, Jesus talked about forgiveness. We've heard all about how we should do it, but nobody really explained to me why it was so critical at an energetic or practical level. You see, any unconscious hate, grudges, resentment that we hold on to energetically becomes like a portal. Think of your aura as like a big white light, and there's certain holes through which the dark can access us. Those unconscious grudges are the portals through which black magic and all the other triggering things they do cause us, if we don't close them, to start to identify then with our lower self, and then we start reacting to fear, and then we're enslaved to their games. And this can be at the individual level in relationship with someone who knows how to get our goat. But see, this also applies to the bigger picture, like dealing with authorities, people in uniforms with guns. If we don't have any holes in our aura, no one can control us. No one can get our goat. No one can lock us up unfairly. No injustice can be done to us if our aura is cleared of those. You are not even a slave to the laws of this world once you've done that healing process, which means you can, like God, because you're one with God at that point, again, right? Speak into being whatever life you want. And if someone comes against you, which really actually wouldn't happen unless you had some holes there in the aura, but let's say you're almost done, like where I'm at, right? Someone comes against you, you can then speak into being judgment on yourself to patch up the hole, and then you speak judgment on the other, and they get their karma delivered, and you're safe. So what we're living into here when we embrace this process is a life of total safety with no limitations whatsoever. But the cost of admission is being willing to revisit our secretly harbored or openly worshipped resentments and judgments towards other people. Because as long as we hold on to those, we've got holes in our aura that they're here to exploit. And in many ways, that's their job, and they do it well. You know, the dark side wouldn't have a place here in this world if they weren't serving an important function. And they'll continue to exist so long as that function is required. That function, divinely speaking, is to trigger us into awareness of our unconscious grudges and the traumas around which they center, so that once they're brought into awareness, they can be alchemized back into their original light form, at which point the darkness is not even interested in us anymore. They're more terrified of us. Too much light makes them start to become aware that they don't exist, so they run. This is why nobody fucks with Jesus. He's all light. When I went to the light and met Jesus, I was deeply in love. I was like, oh, this guy's great. You know, like, where have you been? You're my best friend. You know, the minute I saw him. But I do remember in the backdrop, it was as if there were these parts of me that were going, look at me, why won't you look at me? It was like these wrathful parts of me who felt like the way he was looking at me was ignoring them. Well, those parts of me, those thems in me, when I came back into this world, those are my ops. You see, this world is very much, from that point of view, it's like a dream. Everyone you see in the world, whether you love them or hate them, is a character in your dream. Think about when you go to sleep at night. All the people you might see. You'd be at a carnival or a festival. There's thousands of people. Where do they exist? You're making them up. They're in your head. And in a very similar way, from that divine point of view, everyone you see, including your hidden ops, as creepy as they may be, pedophiles and all the nasty ones that I saw, oof, well, they have to have been in my unconscious for them to exist in my everyday life. Now, I've embraced the process of exhuming my 12th house enemies, bringing them into awareness so they become in astrology what we call 7th house enemies, open enemies, right? And then healing them. This has been the process of me healing my unconscious so that I can dream lucidly and have fun and be safe. But how can we ever be safe in the world if we're harboring deep memories of being unsafe? Fears cause us to avoid life, to avoid getting triggered by abusive police officers or femme fatales with the Jezebel spirit or whatever it is. When we get to these later stages, we have to be totally willing to step into our fears and bring light to alchemize them. And this judgment tool may be a late stage tool for those who are here to anchor the new earth and who are ready to surrender the belief that they are their ego so that they can play the game of just having fun and creating like gods and goddesses. You know, it says that in the Bible. Ye are gods and goddesses, right? It actually says that. They don't always preach that, but it's there. And Jesus said it too. He said, this and greater things shall ye do. Why not? You know, the mind likes to have us believe there's a limited range of possibilities for what life can be. And, you know, the matrix programming loves us to think it's either this thing that I like, but there's this problem with it, or this other thing that I like, but then it's got this problem with it. Oh, man, which one do I choose? No, 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 no. This is a new game we're playing. It's a game of unlimited possibility to create in each moment through choice. But the first choice we need to really master is the choice to own our shadows and alchemize them back into the light so that we can join the self of form and the ego with the self of light, which has never changed. When we join those, there's a third that emerges from the heart identity. And that is our Christ identity. You know, when Jesus came here, he modeled that for us. He modeled the merging of spirit and matter through the heart and became a unique expression of the whole. We call him the Christ. But that wasn't his last name. That's everyone's true name once we do this work. Getting back then again to the tool of judgment. This tool of judgment is extremely powerful because it offers us divine protection in a world of chaos, where chaos agents who are misguided and bound up in toxic devil programming are trying to keep us enslaved because they're afraid of being left behind. But through this tool, not only do we protect ourselves from them, we help to them standing in solidarity with their souls to help liberate them from the very illusions that cause them to come against us. And if there's any better example of what Jesus meant by the phrase, love your enemies, I don't know what it is. So this tool of judgment does trigger us. It almost requires us to master it, start to enjoy being triggered, start to enjoy the shadow work of going into our hidden grievances and resentments. We don't go in, though, with judgment, you see. We go in with neutrality, and we sit with them. And we look for the gifts that are hidden in our own rage and resentment and vengeance. And rest assured, if we do that without reacting on them or burying and running from them long enough, we find that our deepest, darkest hate caves and traumas are what hold the greatest gifts and the remembrance of who we are as an expression of the whole, as the Christ, which is our true identity. That Christ self in you is your true identity. The dark tries to trigger us, to get us to believe that we are the ego so that we'll react, and then they can get into a back and forth and put their straw in our milkshake and suck out our energy. But see, they've gone insane because they've lived for so long without access to the light inside. They've given up on it, the idea that they could find it within. By allowing yourself to alchemize your resentment towards those who've oppressed you in the past and who may do so in the present, the lens of perception gets cleared. And you begin to see that they are just slaves to programming the same way we are. And when we take the leadership role, then to unslave ourselves by loving basically all these parts of ourselves without letting them take over, we begin to be able to use the gifts of that resentment and that rage and everything for divine purposes, to make choices, powerful choices, that liberate us from the laws of enslavement altogether, the matrix, so that we become an embodiment, a walking embodiment within the matrix, that the laws here are relative and optional. There's a better way. The better way is to call judgment on ourselves where we're out of alignment with law and with compassion heal those parts of us, and then stay vigilant to our brothers and learn to call judgment on them when they're infringing on our rights so that they can awaken from that enslavement while we maintain a safe aura free of interference, open to share, commune with others in the collective. This is the new earth. And maybe it's a bit triggering to hear about having to go inside to do this work, but understand this is the only work you really have to do. Because if you do this work, your life will have no limits. There's nothing else to do but decide what looks like fun, call it out, and live it. So I hope you found this helpful.